They were laughing when I came home in a wheelchair. 3 silhouettes on my porch. My nephew holding a beer bottle. My cousin tossing keys in the air. My sister-in-law filming them with a smug little smile. And behind them the empty lot where my barn used to be. The for sale sign hadn't even been taken down. I hadn't crossed the gravel yet, but I could already smell the fresh paint on the sold board. They didn't know I was discharged early. And they sure as hell didn't expect me to show up before the will reading. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Curtis, I'm 61 years old, and this is what really happened. It started with a stroke. They call it a minor one. But when your left side stops listening to your brain and the nurses have to spoon oatmeal into your mouth, nothing about it feels minor. The hospital smelled like bleach and wet rubber soles. Always cold. Always loud. And when you've spent 61 years working sunrise to sunset on a family farm, lying still for 2 weeks makes you go crazy. But the worst part? No one visited. Not once. No flowers. No cards. Not even a lousy get well soon text. The nurse, kind lady named Laverne, kept saying, "Your folks must be busy on the farm. I'm sure they'll come tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. It was Laverne who brought me the newspaper. She'd fold it just right so I could read it one-handed. And that's how I found out. A tiny blurb near the real estate section. Historic Ellsworth homestead sold in private cash deal. The photo was unmistakable. That red barn. My red barn. The one my father built before I was born. The one with the horseshoe nailed to the upper beam. The one I repainted every 4th of July like clockwork. Sold. No call, no heads up. No damn permission. Laverne noticed I'd stopped breathing. "Laverne, Mr. Curtis? You all right?" I couldn't speak. My fingers trembled. The ink smeared. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of her. But something inside me cracked. Quiet and permanent. The next day I started moving my fingers again. Just barely. My left pinky twitched like a dying insect. But it was enough to make the therapist call me a miracle. It wasn't a miracle. It was rage. By the following week I was walking again. Slow, stiff but steady. I signed my own discharge papers. Didn't even tell the hospital I was leaving early. Just packed my bag, thanked Laverne and walked out. Took a taxi from Claremont General all the way to the farm. And there they were. Laughing, on my porch. They didn't see me at first. The car pulled up behind the silo and I stayed low, watching. My nephew Darren was sitting in my favorite rocking chair. The one my father sanded smooth by hand in '72. He was pretending to smoke a cigar. Darren. Man, Uncle Kurt's timing couldn't have been better. He goes down and bam, prime real estate. My cousin Brent clinked his beer against Darren's. Brent. And with the lawyers distracted, no one even asked about the old will. Told you forging that signature would work. Then came the laugh. That slow, scratchy, mean little cackle. Nancy, my brother's widow. She leaned against the doorframe, phone in hand. "Nancy, I got it all on video, boys. When the buyers flip this for condos, we'll be sipping martinis in Maui. Cheers to retirement." That was enough. I stepped out of the shadows. The porch light hit my face like a punch. They froze. Darren dropped the cigar. Brent choked on his beer. Nancy's phone slipped from her hand and bounced down the steps. "Yeah, I'm gonna say this once. Get off my land." "Darren, Uncle Kurt? We thought you were still in?" "Me? Hospital?" "Yeah, I was. Until I found out you sold what didn't belong to you." Brent looked at Nancy, then back at me. "Brent, technically, it was legal. After you signed me." Don't finish that sentence. I walked up the steps. My legs screamed with every step, but I didn't show it. They stepped aside slowly, like I was carrying a gun. I opened the front door and stepped inside. The living room smelled like lemon polish and cheap cologne. My grandfather's rifle was missing from the mantel. The family photos had been boxed up. There was a briefcase on the dining table. I opened it. Inside, notarized documents. Deed auto transfer. Power of attorney. My signature, forged with the wrong middle initial. They didn't even get my name right. I turned to them. "Nee, you sold the land, but you forgot one thing." Nancy crossed her arms. "Nancy." "What?" "Me. That the will hasn't been read yet." She scoffed. "Nancy, your daddy's been dead for 6 months. What's left to read?" "The amended one. The one he signed in the hospital before he passed." The one I have. They all blinked. Brent. That's not possible. The lawyer. Me. The lawyer you paid off is under investigation, and the real executor will be here in 2 days. I walked to the fireplace and lit a match. The old flames roared to life like they'd missed me. Me, so enjoy your last night here. Nancy's voice was higher now, brittle and sharp. Nancy. You wouldn't dare. This isn't over. I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone and hit record. Me, repeat what you said earlier. About Maui. She lunged at me. Darren held her back. I turned the phone off and smiled. Me, see you at the will reading. What they didn't know. The buyer they sold the farm to was me. They didn't leave. Not that night. Not the next morning either. When I woke up after the first real sleep I'd had in months, their car was still parked under the old walnut tree. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee in hand as Darren paced circles in the gravel, phone glued to his ear. Nancy sat inside the car, sunglasses on, arms crossed like a cartoon villain waiting for her cue. Brent was nowhere in sight. Probably out back checking if the survey markers were still in place. They thought I was bluffing. They thought the fire in the hearth, the threat in my voice, the confidence in my step, were all an act. But they were wrong. Because 2 months before my stroke, I'd done something I hadn't told anyone, not even my lawyer at the time. I'd made a second call, not to a notary, not to a doctor, not to the bank, to a woman named Marian Wexler, an estate attorney from Tall Pines. I'd seen her speak at a legal clinic in town years ago. Fierce, honest, sharp as a rusted nail. She didn't wear lipstick, but she wore boots. The kind that made sound when they hit wood floors. She reminded me of my mother. So when my father's mind started going foggy last winter, and the vultures started circling, I hired her. Quietly. We amended the will. We drafted power of attorney protections, and we tucked every page inside a sealed envelope, notarized and time-stamped. Then we handed it to a court-approved fiduciary for safekeeping. I watched that envelope get locked in a fireproof safe, watched the key handed to the judge. All before I ever landed in a hospital bed. All before the stroke. All before the 3 snakes on my porch thought they'd hit the jackpot. I leaned against the sink and smiled into my coffee. Me, let 'em sweat. That afternoon, Marian called. Marian. They filed an injunction to stall the reading. Claimed you're mentally unfit, that you've been hallucinating. Me. Did they now? Marian? They even sent over hospital paperwork. Falsified, I might add. The judge wasn't impressed. I let out a dry laugh. Me? So when's the new date? Marian. Still Monday. 9 a.m. Courthouse Annex. Me? Good. Marian. Curtis. Her voice softened. Marian. I know you're angry. But remember what your father wanted, no public spectacle. I looked out the window again. Darren had finally sat down on the porch steps, head in hands. Oh, I won't make a spectacle. But I'm not hiding either. Marian didn't argue. She knew me too well by then. Sunday came like molasses. They stayed the whole time. Never spoke to me again, but I saw the tension in their movements. They slept in the car, rotated shifts using the bathroom when I wasn't watching. They still thought they owned something, as if occupancy equaled ownership, but the land knew better. That night, a storm rolled in. Not heavy, just enough to stir the wind and rattle the shutters. I sat by the window, watching lightning illuminate the silhouette of my barn, or what used to be my barn. Just stumps and gravel now. A void where legacy once stood. And yet, I felt calm, because they hadn't really taken anything. Not the real things. Not the generations of sweat that sank into the soil. Not the names carved under the floorboards upstairs, mine included. And certainly not the truth. Monday came like judgment. I wore the same boots I'd worn to my father's funeral. Polished, laced, steady. The courthouse annex was a squat brick building, half forgotten, with flickering fluorescence and coffee-stained carpet. Inside, they were already waiting. Nancy in a pantsuit 2 sizes too tight. Brent in a navy blazer he clearly borrowed. Darren still chewing gum like it was his only form of therapy. Marian sat beside me at the table. No nonsense, no makeup, just boots. Across from us sat the fiduciary and Judge Halverson, a square-jawed man who'd known my father since kindergarten. Judge, we're here to review the final estate documents of Franklin Ellsworth, deceased. This is a closed proceeding. All present parties are named in the will or required by court order. Nancy leaned in. Nancy, Your Honor, before we begin, we'd like to submit a motion to Judge. Motion denied. She blinked. Judge, you submitted fraudulent medical records. You attempted to preemptively sell assets held in trust. And you tampered with a federal notary. So unless you'd like to be held in contempt, I suggest you sit down. Nancy sat. Hard. Marion pulled out a slim envelope. Marion, per Mr. Ellsworth's final instructions, we request the amended will be read in full. The judge nodded. And then, the truth unfolded, line by line, my father's voice in legal form, granting full ownership of the land, the house, the family trust, and all holdings to me. Only me. No carve-outs. No shares. Just a single decisive transfer. Because as he'd written, Curtis stood by me. Curtis buried me. Curtis earns what he tends. Then came the clause that made Nancy choke. Any parties found to have interfered with this will, forged documents, or misused Curtis Ellsworth's name or signature shall be immediately stripped of any claims, and subject to full civil and criminal liability. Silence. The kind that doesn't need a gavel. The judge cleared his throat. Judge, is that clear? Darren opened his mouth. Then closed it. Marion stood, calm as ever. Marion, we've already filed civil charges. Your Honor, we'll be submitting the video recording as evidence. Nancy's voice cracked. Nancy, you can't, we didn't know he was filming. Judge, ignorance is not a defense. I stood last. Not to gloat, just to finish it. Me, the land's mine, the debt's yours. We're even. They didn't respond. They just sat there, frozen. And when I walked out of that courthouse, the storm had passed. But the dust behind me, that was just starting to rise. The drive home from the courthouse wasn't long, but it felt final, like the last mile of a war march you didn't want but had no choice but to finish. The gravel crunched under my tires the same way it always had. But now there was no laughter on the porch. No Darren playing landlord. No Nancy posing for her fake little videos. Just quiet. And for the first time in weeks it felt like my quiet. I pulled into the drive and didn't even bother locking the truck. Walked up the steps. Put my hand on the old doorframe. The same frame my father carved a star into when I was 5, to mark the day we fixed the front gate together. It was still there. Worn. Faded. But permanent. Like me. Inside, the house still smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and desperation. But the difference now? I could open the windows. Let it out. So I did. Everyone. Top to bottom. Let the wind sweep through like a baptism. Let the lies air out. I spent the next few hours undoing what they'd done. Pulled their fake decor off the walls. Tossed their luggage into black contractor bags. Loaded up every last trace of their squatter act into the truck bed. Then I drove it to the junkyard in McCready's Hollow, and left it all there. Not for sale. Just gone. When I came back it was almost dusk. I sat on the porch with a jar of my father's last batch of moonshine, the kind he only broke out on occasions that deserve fire. This counted. I toasted the wind. And for a moment, I felt him with me. That it wasn't over yet. Because Nancy had lawyers. And Brent had connections in the zoning board. And Darren, dumb as he was, had posted a TikTok video 2 weeks ago, announcing our generational land flip. It had gotten over 200,000 views. And in those views, my name, my property, my barn, used like a prop. Which meant the damage wasn't just legal, it was public. I had 2 choices. I could let it go, or I could burn the last bridge they thought they owned. I picked up the phone. Marianne, I need you to look into all 3 of them. Every asset, every pending deal, and every lie they posted online. Marion, already on it. Darren's video was monetized. He made nearly $7,000 off it. Me. Perfect. Then we file copyright. Marion, all 3 of them used footage from inside the house. That's trespassing and unauthorized media usage. Me. Then we file a full takedown. Marion, you sure you want to go this far? Me. They filmed my life like it was content. Time they learned what that costs. She paused. Marion. All right. I'll prepare the digital cease and desists. Click. That night I opened an old box from under the stairs. Inside? Photos. Dozens of them. My father in his war uniform. My mother in the flower dress she wore every Sunday. Me, 8 years old, holding up a chicken with both hands like it was a trophy. I scanned every single one. Created a website. Titled it, Ellsworth Legacy. What they tried to sell. Then I uploaded the images. the stories. Even scanned handwritten letters from my father to his brother in '57. Gave people a window into what this farm really was. And at the top, a link to the TikTok videos Darren and Brent had posted side by side with the court filings proving fraud. Then I watched. In 1 week the site got 70,000 views. In 2 weeks, 400,000. The comments poured in. Heartbreaking what they did. Glad he fought back. People will sell anything for Clave. Then a reporter reached out. Wanted to do a piece on rural estate theft. I agreed. Not for attention. For the principle. The story ran in the Sunday section of the Times-Dispatch. Full-page photo of me standing in front of what used to be the barn. Hand on my cane. One cutting through my coat. Caption: he lost his farm while fighting for his life, but he took it back inch by inch. The moment that paper hit the stands, Nancy called. I didn't answer. Then she showed up. Middle of the afternoon. Uninvited. She looked smaller than I remembered. Hair pulled too tight, eyes twitchy. Nancy, we need to talk. I opened the screen door. Let it slap closed behind me. Mean? No, Nancy, you need to listen. She tried to speak. I raised a hand. You thought the land was just dirt. Just money. Something you could sell and forget. But it's not. Nancy, I didn't mean for it to go this far. We were desperate. Me. You were greedy. And stupid. And now you're infamous. Her mouth opened. Then shut. Me. I don't want an apology. I don't want a settlement. I want silence. Nancy. Curtis. Me? You walk off this property, you never come back. And in return, I drop the civil suit. She hesitated. Me, our choice. Stay and burn or leave in faith. She left. Brent and Darren never came near again. But the world did. Letters started arriving. People sending stories of their own stolen homes, lost family lands, erased legacies. I responded to every single one. Started a foundation with the settlement money. Helped 4 families reclaim their stolen farms. And every year now, on the day I came home, I plant something new. This year, it was a fig tree. Because figs grow slow, but they last. Spring came late that year. Frost clung to the edges of the fields longer than usual, like the earth itself wasn't ready to trust warmth again. Couldn't blame it. Not after everything it had been through. Same as me. But when the thaw finally came, it came fast. The ground softened. Birds returned. And one morning I stepped out barefoot onto the porch. And it smelled like home again. Not bleach. Not dust or stale greed. Just wet soil, fresh air, and memory. The fig tree stood knee-high now. Tiny leaves curled at the ends. Stubborn. And green. And near its roots, a small brass plaque gleamed under the morning light. It read, "For every inch they took, we planted one back." I didn't put my name on it. Didn't need to. This land knew who I was. And so did the people who mattered. I'd kept the foundation small. Quiet. Just enough to make a difference without becoming some billboard charity. 4 families helped that year. 1 in Mississippi lost their orchard to a forged deed. 1 in Arizona, swindled out of their ranch by a distant cousin with a gambling habit. 2 in Appalachia. Older siblings who forged inheritance papers after their disabled brother had a stroke. That one hit me the hardest. I visited him, rolled up in my truck with a pie and a manila folder. He didn't speak much. Couldn't. But his sister sat across from me, eyes wide when I laid the documents out on her dining table. She didn't cry. She just said, "I thought people like you didn't exist anymore." Me? I didn't either, until I had to become one. She hugged me. I don't get hugged often. It stuck with me. When I got back home, I added a new rule to the foundation charter. No one who defends legacy stands alone. The press tried to circle back. Wanted updates. Another headline. I declined every time. Told Marion, "We don't do this for cameras, we do this so ghosts can rest." Still, word spread. Mostly among the quiet ones. The farmers. The tradesmen. The folks who keep their pain private but carry it every day like calluses. They started sending letters. 1 envelope had no return address. Just 3 words on the back. They tried 2. Inside, a single photo. A woman standing in front of a burned-down cottage. Holding a child, smiling. I framed it. Put it in the hallway, under a sign that reads, "They don't win forever." By late spring, I started rebuilding the barn. Not because I needed it. I don't raise stock anymore. But because the land asked for it. And I wanted to give it something back. I didn't hire a crew. I called old friends. Some I hadn't seen in years. 12 men showed up that weekend. 8 women brought food. And before we lifted a single beam, we all sat in a circle on overturned crates and shared stories. One of them, Hank, had lost his land to eminent domain in '97. He still wore the same hat from that day, bent at the rim, dust. When I handed him the hammer, he choked up. Hank, didn't think I'd ever get to build again. Me, then let's build like hell. And we did. Raised the frame in 2 weeks, roofed it in 1, painted it the color of rusted blood, deep, honest, defiant. I nailed the old horseshoe back on the beam myself, didn't speak a word while I did it. Didn't have to. One morning, about a month later, Marian pulled up the drive. She was smiling before she even stepped out of the car. Marianne, you're not going to believe this. Me? Try me. She handed me a thick envelope. Inside, settlement checks. Nancy had settled. Brent and Darren, too. No apologies. Just money. Not enough to make them feel it, but enough to call it closed. I handed the checks back to Marian. Me? Divided evenly. Half to the families, half to the legal fund. Marian nodded. Marianne, you sure? That's a lot of zeros. Me? I counted, and I'd rather grow figs than debts. She laughed. That night I stood in the new barn. Alone. The air inside was warm from the day's work, but still smelled of pine and sawdust. I leaned against the beam. Listened to the creak of the rafters. The same kind of creak I heard as a boy when the wind came through late. I thought of my father. Of what he'd say if he saw this. Then I thought of something else. Something Nancy had said during the court proceedings. Her voice still rang in my memory. Nancy, it's just land. People come and go. Dirt doesn't care. She was wrong. Dirt remembers. Every footstep. Every buried nail. Every spilled tear. And it never forgets who tried to trade roots for cash. I walked outside. The stars were out. Full sky. Crickets. Distant owls. The hum of a world that never needed an audience. I looked back at the house. Lights off, still, safe, and in that silence I found something I hadn't felt in years. Not victory, not revenge, but rest. Some stories don't end with fire. They end with breath, and space, and a place to stand where no one can sell your name again. Summer passed like a slow breath. No alarms, no lawyers, no family pretending they'd earned what they tried to steal. Just days that began with coffee on the porch and ended with dust on my boots. I fixed the fence line by the east orchard. Taught myself how to use the new solar inverter Marian had sent over as a housewarming gift. And when the birds started nesting in the rafters of the new barn, I let them. I wasn't building a fortress, just a home, but it didn't stay quiet forever. One afternoon, about a week before fall, I found a letter taped to my front gate. No postage, just a single sheet of printer paper. Folded in half. No envelope. No name. Inside, typed in bold, "You humiliated us. Hope it was worth it." That was it. No signature. No threats. No demand. Just that sentence, brittle and bitter like the last scrape of a blade that failed to cut deep. I burned it in the fire pit. Watched the corners curl and blacken while the wind took the ashes west. It wasn't worth it because it hurt them. It was worth it because I was finally free. That same week I received a call, not from Marian, not from a neighbor, but from a man named Byron Shaw. Byron, you don't know me, sir, but I read your story in the Dispatch. My family's in trouble. I almost hung up, but there was something in his voice. Same edge I'd had when I called Marian that night from the hospital, half broken, half boiling. So I listened. His story mirrored mine in all the worst ways. 3 siblings, 1 aging parent with dementia, and a cabin. A legacy about to be sold out from under him using falsified guardianship papers. Me? You got documentation? Byron. I've got a shoebox of receipts, photos, mail, you name it. But no lawyer who'll listen. Me? You do now. I called Marian. Told her it was time to expand. Not the foundation. The fight. That fall, we filed the first civil interference suit under a new clause I'd funded with the settlement money. We called it the legacy clause. Within 2 months, Byron's family case was reopened. Within 6, he had the deed restored and full legal guardianship over his father's affairs. He called me in tears. Byron, I didn't think people like you still existed. Same line, different voice. It landed the same way. By December, 3 more cases had come in. We helped them all. Quietly, carefully, without a shred of Then came the invitation. Certified mail, gold embossed letterhead. The American Heritage Conservancy requests your presence to receive the inaugural Legacy Preservation Award. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called Marion. Me. Did you nominate me? Marion. No. I declined the invite too. Me. Why? Marion. Because I work for you. You already gave me a purpose. I didn't attend the ceremony. Didn't want the photo op. The applause. I donated the award money to an elderly couple fighting eviction in Oklahoma. Never even met them. Didn't need to. Because this wasn't about recognition. It was about restoration. Still, that winter I finally let myself do something selfish. I opened the attic for the first time in years. It smelled like dust and cedar and old rope. I found a trunk with my father's war medals, my mother's hymn book, and an old leather-bound journal I didn't remember seeing before. Inside, his handwriting. Slanted, sharp, and steady. One page stood out, dated March 14th, 1985. Curtis sees things in soil. Says the land breathes. He's right, and one day he'll protect it better than I ever could. I sat on the attic floor for an hour, just breathing, and I didn't cry, but I came close. The next morning, I framed that page, hung it next to the fireplace, right above the mantel where Nancy once posed for her social media lies. Now it held the truth. Spring came early the following year. The fig tree flowered, and beneath it I buried a small iron box. Inside, a copy of the will, a hard drive with every document, every video, every case Marion and I had taken on, and a note in my handwriting. If you're reading this, someone tried again. Don't let them win. Then I sealed it, poured cement over the top, etched one last phrase into the slab. Let the roots outlive the greed. I didn't tell anyone it was there. Not Marion. Not the families we helped. Not the town. Because some legacies aren't meant to be public. They're meant to wait silent and patient for the moment they're needed. And that's where mine sits now, waiting. The next years came like chapters in a quiet book. No loud arrivals. No dramatic exits. Just steady seasons, slow mornings and letters, more and more of them. Some came from across the country. Others from neighbors I'd never met, even though we shared the same soil. Each one handwritten. Each one ending the same way. They thought I wouldn't fight back. And each time I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote back. You don't have to fight alone. The foundation grew. Quietly. We never took a dime in donations. Only used the settlements and funds we recovered from the guilty. That was the rule. Take from the takers. Give to the stolen. By the 5th year we'd restored land to 17 families in 5 states. Not all were farms. One was a florist in Missouri whose greenhouse was nearly bulldozed after her landlord's son filed fake death paperwork. One was a Black World War II veteran's widow, who hadn't been told her name was removed from the deed after her stroke. One was a woman who'd been told by her own son that the house she'd lived in for 42 years was being repurposed. We gave it all back, and we never advertised it. That's what made people trust us. But with every victory, something else grew inside me. Not bitterness. Not revenge. Just a kind of weight, a knowing, that there'd never be a last case. Because so long as there's land to steal, there will be hands trying to steal it. So I started training someone. Not a lawyer, not a relative. Just a kid from the next county over named Wyatt. He showed up one day asking for a job, said he didn't care what it was. So I handed him a rake. He didn't complain. Next day, I handed him a ledger. Told him to organize it. He did. Clean, precise. No questions. By the end of that summer, he knew more about probate law than most paralegals. So I started showing him everything. The hard drives, the sealed files, the evidence logs, the court tactics. And one afternoon while sorting property maps, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why are you still doing all this, after you won, after the others paid? I looked up from my chair. Didn't answer at first. Then I stood, walked to the window, pointed to the fig tree. Me, see that? Wyatt nodded. Me. Planted that after I came home, after they tried to erase me. It grew because I stayed. Not because I fought. Because I endured. He didn't speak. Just listened. I kept going. Me. One day someone will try again. Not to me. To you. Or someone you love. And when that day comes, You'll need roots deeper than rage. Wyatt nodded once. Didn't blink. He understood. Months passed. Then came the call I never wanted. Marianne. Her voice was hoarse. Slower than usual. Marianne Curtis. I'm sick. Docs gave me 6 months, maybe. Silence hung between us like fog. Me. Where are you? Marianne. Still in Tall Pines. Haven't told anyone yet. Me. I'll be there by morning. I made the drive in 5 hours flat. Her house was small, warm, smelled like lavender and old paper. We didn't talk about law, or revenge, or the files in her cabinet labeled Ellsworth Clause. We talked about family, legacy, faith, and when she handed me a small envelope, I didn't open it right away. Me? What is it? Marianne. You'll know when it's time. I left before dusk. She passed 4 months later. Peacefully. No funeral. Her instructions were clear. Cremation. No flowers. Just scatter her ashes under the oak tree near her first courthouse. I honored every word. Then alone in my barn I opened the envelope. Inside 2 things. A letter. And a deed. The letter read, "You taught me how to fight quietly. Now teach someone else. This land is yours now. Let it grow what it needs." The deed was to a small patch of acreage in Tall Pines. Nothing big, but rich wooded, untouched. I smiled. And the next morning I took Wyatt there. Me. Your roots start here. He looked at me, confused. Wyatt. What do you mean? Me, this land's yours. Marianne left it, to us. But I won't need it forever. You will. Wyatt didn't know what to say. Didn't need to. He put his hand on the tree bark, just felt it. That night I walked the perimeter of my own land again. Felt the cold in my knees. The creak in my back. Time doesn't pause for revenge. It just moves. And you move with it, or you fade. I wasn't afraid to fade, but I wanted the right things to remain. The land, the fig tree, the fireproof box, the stories, and maybe one day someone else would add to it. Their story, their loss, their reclaiming, because revenge isn't the end. It's the beginning of memory fighting back. And some memories are worth defending. Even if no one claps when you do it. Even if no one remembers your name. As long as they remember the land stood. And that someone once said, let the roots outlive the greed. That's enough. That's more than enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments.